All right, folks, we're going live in 3, 2...
Events here in the Middle East took a horrifying turn for the worst a few minutes ago. We have confirmed reports that Israel's largest city, Tel Aviv, has been hit with a series of chemical warheads that have been spreading deadly poison across the region as quickly as the wind will carry it. Command leader General Al-Azhar had this to say a few minutes ago.
Right now, as I speak these words, a deadly cloud is traveling across the Israeli countryside, killing every living thing it touches. Even gas masks are useless against these chemicals. This cloud does not care if you are a soldier or a civilian, an adult or a baby, a Jew or a Palestinian. It will not destroy military targets, communication outposts, transportation links or airfields. Instead, it has only one purpose: to kill innocent people, to try to finish the job that Hitler started and failed.
Clearly the general means what he is saying, and right now the activity in the air above us has intensified almost beyond belief. Enormous explosions in the distance have rocked the ground we're standing on. We have confirmed reports now that the U.S. aircraft carrier Nebraska has just been hit by a torpedo from a Chinese nuclear submarine. No confirmation yet on what type of weapon was used, but we do have confirmation that the Nebraska has been destroyed, and its crew of nearly 5,000 men and women are presumed dead. We're still waiting for an official statement from the Pentagon, but for now it's safe to say that the United States of America is officially at war. Meanwhile, here in central Israel, the greatest military confrontation in the history of the world continues to loom this evening, with an estimated 3 million troops now deployed within 100 square miles of where I am standing now. Another 2 million are reported to be less than 3 hours away. Clearly, everything we are seeing is pointing in the direction of a battle the likes of which this world has never seen. Nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons have now been used, and unless someone hits the brake, our future may be a short one.
Footage you are seeing is less than 90 seconds old. I'm standing here not a quarter mile from the Chinese Defense Ministry headquarters, which, as you can see, has just been rocked by an enormous explosion. We were waiting here for a statement from the Chinese on the attack on the Nebraska when the building just burst into flames. Then, within a matter of seconds, the entire structure just caved in on itself. There is no doubt that what we have just witnessed is a U.S. retaliation for an attack on the Nebraska, and that our planet has just edged closer to the brink of World War III. David Boyle, WNN, Beijing.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have just received word from NORAD Command that several land-based nuclear missile launches have now been detected. We will keep you apprised as to their intended targets, but for now we are advising everyone who can see us right now to take immediate shelter.
General Al-Azhar, nukes inbound, Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, ETA 3 minutes.
You know what to do. Something's fist.
Now confirmed that a nuclear explosion has rocked the Soviet nuclear missile site on the Kamchatka Peninsula in northern Russia. No word yet on who is responsible for the bombing, and also no word on whether or not the Russians had launched any weapons of their own prior to the strike. There is little doubt, however, that more nuclear strikes can be expected around the world in the next little while. We take you now back to Richard Stanfield at the Pentagon.
Forces not already in the Gulf are being mobilized in record numbers, and the United States will throw every resource it has into battling these enemies of peace. A full draft program is now being prepared and will be announced within the hour. In the meantime, we ask all Americans to pray for the President of the United States will now address the nation.
My fellow Americans, approximately 11 minutes ago, several hundred nuclear weapons were launched against us and our allies by the enemies of world peace. The exact targets cannot be determined, but catastrophic destruction is a certainty. Even though the policy of mutually assured destruction was intended to deter an event such as this one, it is also a philosophy that I believe must be carried out in practice, not just in principle. In keeping with that view, I have just authorized a counterstrike, the magnitude of which is almost beyond measure. Those who would see fit to kill hundreds of millions of innocent people for political gain must not be allowed to take control of the world. And the United States will not stand by and watch them do it, whatever the cost. It is indeed a sad statement about the human race that people would rather destroy the planet than open their minds to the views and beliefs of others. I am deeply sorry for what has happened. I am sorry that it has happened on my watch. God help us all.
The President's message is clear. Nuclear destruction far beyond anything any of us could have imagined is now imminent. The fact that the President is now aboard Air Force One suggests that the continental United States is indeed a likely target. Unfortunately, the design of the warheads makes it impossible to know which cities have been targeted until only seconds before detonation. For all we know, we could be sitting on one of those targets right now. Any of us could. We now join our Los Angeles affiliate station already in progress.
But it is unlikely that any kind of defense could be designed to protect us against such terrible weapons of mass destruction. I think probably the best thing we could have done would be perhaps to go home, say goodbye, and perhaps...
Oh my God, Charlie! Charlie, this is impossible. It's just impossible. I just can't believe it. I don't know what to say. My cameraman, Charles Tapp, he's just disappeared right in front of me. I don't understand it. People all around me seem to have been vaporized or something.
Someone took my baby!
Helen, are you okay?
Jim was working on the light. It just fell down.
Can't believe it. I just can't believe it.
Suzette and Eve, they've vanished. Oh my God, not Helen too.
Bronson, are you there? Wilson, please, are you there?
If they had a weapon like this, our intelligence should have known about it. How can we fight against this if we don't even know what it is?
Sir, we are receiving reports from all over the place. Planes down, men missing. Right here in camp, we appear to have lost at least 100 men.
We must have been hit by something. Find out.
General, it's not just here. Our live feed from stateside shows that people have vanished from there too.
Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, it appears that something very unusual is happening in the world at the moment. We are receiving reports from all over the world of people simply vanishing into thin air. We are not receiving any news on any nuclear detonations at this time, so exactly what has happened is not clear. We will be keeping in touch with you on everything that's happening, so please stay tuned.
Hey, Helen, we're clear.
Helen, please, can you hear me?
Bronson, thank God you're okay. I thought you...
I thought you were too.
What's going on? Do you know anything?
No, I don't know if anyone does. But I can tell you this, all the nukes are gone. They simply vanished from radar along with all those people. The Israelis here are convinced it's a new weapon of some kind, but it's hard to imagine what it could be.
I'm just so glad you're all right, Bronson. I don't know what I'd do without you.
Well, I'm about to head to Jerusalem with General Al-Azhar. Maybe I can find some answers there.
I think we're about to find out more, Bronson. Keep watching your monitor because we're getting some more reports now. Ladies and gentlemen, we are receiving reports from all around the world that may shed some light on exactly what might have happened. We'll start with videographer Alan Camborough in London.
The situation here in central England is absolutely out of control. There are hardly words to describe it. With reports of tens of thousands of, I guess what you would have to call vanishings, now reported, the impact has been staggering. Here on a highway not far from London, thousands of vehicles suddenly became deadly projectiles when their drivers simply disappeared into thin air.
And while the degree of carnage is staggering, almost everyone agrees it is only a fraction of the nuclear devastation we all expected only a few moments ago.
It's almost impossible to comprehend. In a tiny Swiss village, this is the scene after a suddenly unmanned passenger train with more than 60 cars raced into a train station at full speed, smashing into the back of another train without warning. This aircraft plummeted to the ground in a huge fireball, and instant after the tower lost contact with the pilot. This helicopter lost altitude without explanation and crashed into the water below. The pilot's clothes were found, but no body was recovered.
And citizens around the world are reacting in the only way most people could expect, with total panic. Here in Tokyo, hundreds of people were gathered around this lobby, listening to a top government official. He was announcing his belief that the Battle of Armageddon was actually a fulfillment of ancient prophecy. As he spoke, however, he vanished in front of them, leaving only a neatly folded pile of clothes where he stood only seconds before. No one at the time could possibly have known that the same thing had happened in every city on Earth.
And no matter where you look around the world, it seems that almost everyone has lost someone. And there was total mayhem on city streets everywhere as people rush around trying to find their loved ones. The only evidence that they were ever even here is the neatly folded piles of clothes that lie from one end of the globe to the other.
So what in the world happened? No one seems to have the first idea, but there are a few things we do know. First of all, NATO command now confirms that every nuclear weapon that was in flight at the time of this event did indeed also disappear. Where the people went, however, is anyone's guess. NASA and the crew aboard the Space Shuttle Columbia report no sighting from beyond this world, at least none that our instruments can detect.
On the military front, all hostilities have simply ceased in chaos and confusion. Any military forces that can be spared patrol the borders of their respective nations, but not one of those nations has any idea who or what they are looking for.
Looting and rioting are commonplace, and as one New York police chief told us, it's as if a cloud of evil suddenly descended upon us tonight. Unfortunately, many of the world's peace officers are being forced to pay the price.
There is no doubt that panic and mayhem have had their run for much of the day. Grief has set in, and millions are having to grapple with the reality that they may well have seen their loved ones for the very last time. Mothers have lost babies, fathers have lost sons, wives have lost husbands.
No matter where you turn or who you talk to, it seems that almost everyone has lost someone. At the same time, everyone must be wondering who might be next.
How could one man disappear from his seat in an airplane, leaving another passenger just sitting there? Why were they taken? Why were we left behind? For WNN, I'm Janet Shutt.
One world, one network. This is WNN.
Revelation 5. And they sang a new song, saying, Thou art worthy to take the book or the scroll and to open its seals, for thou wast slain and hast redeemed us to God. Some of you have texts that say redeemed men. Redeemed us to God by thy blood out of every kindred and tongue and people and nation, and has made us, some of you have versions that read them, has made us unto our God kings and priests, and we, and some of you have versions that say they, we shall reign on the earth. Now back to Revelation 5, and let's take a look at the problem of this text. Is it us or them? Now here it is, folks, in a nutshell. Listen carefully. This is going to determine whether you walk out of here believing in the pre-tribulational rapture or whether you believe in a post-tribulational rapture. I'm going to quote one of the greatest scholars on the book of Revelation who is also a post-tribulationist. He says in his book, George Eldon Ladd, Commentary on Revelation, that if in fact it is us, then that group is speaking about their own redemption and must refer to the church, which immediately makes us all pre-tribulational. Because whatever the 24 elders are, they represent a completed group of people. He happens to believe they are angels. I believe they cannot be angels, and it's stated so back in our message in chapter 4. But this is a little bit stronger than you can believe. I decided before I came tonight to go through all of the Bibles I have. Now, I got 2 shelves of them in all kinds of translations. And I was amazed how often this particular footnote appears. Most ancient authorities agree that the word is them or they. Even in versions that are King James and support the us in the text, there's a little footnote. I have a King James. It has a footnote. Here's what it says. Most early manuscripts omit us in verse 9 and read them and they instead of us and we in verse 10. One of the leading pre-tribulational teachers in America says in his commentary that beyond a doubt all scholars know that the translation is them and they, not us. That we pre-tribulationists should not use this passage to teach our point, since it reveals our lack of scholarship. Oh, hey, there are worse statements than that. In various commentaries. Well, you know, I got kind of, inquiring minds want to know. I decided to look into the matter. I have spoken publicly on this matter and have been asked also by some who are Greek manuscript men to keep my mouth shut. I'm not going to. See, the insinuation is, listen carefully, the insinuation is that the average layperson cannot really fathom this. I don't believe that at all. I believe the average layperson can fathom it and ought to know about it. First of all, out of all the manuscripts we have, the most important ones are, of course, in the original language, Greek manuscripts of the New Testament. Far more important than any other language into which the Greek is translated. Well, how many manuscripts out of some 5,000 on the New Testament do you think have the book of Revelation, any part of it, in the manuscript? Only 95. There's only 95 known Greek manuscripts on the book of Revelation in existence in the world. Now, some may be under the protective covering of some hill that archaeology hasn't uncovered yet, but we have only 95 known manuscripts in Greek on the book of Revelation. Now, I ask myself, since these are all fragments, how many of those have Revelation 5 in the fragment? Very interesting, only 24 out of the 95 have Revelation 5. Now, there's only 24 Greek manuscripts in the world that have Revelation 5 in it. I find it extremely interesting that 23 out of the 24 read us. There is, in fact, only one manuscript, Codex Alexandrinus, that says us. Now, it says them. No. Yes, them. Hey, after that lion thing last week, I need your help, okay? Next project. When the Latin Vulgate was translated, 4th century A.D., Jerome, who translated the Latin Vulgate, became the standard Bible of the Catholic Church for 1,000 years, at least, and some still use it. The Latin Vulgate of Jerome had more Greek manuscripts available to him than we even know exist on this book. And I find it extremely interesting that in the Latin Vulgate it reads us in both verses, verse 9 and 10. First person plural. You say, well, that's interesting, but, One guy came to me and he said, well, you know, the King James in 1611 didn't have all the evidence. And it wasn't until 1634 that they finally got all the manuscripts from Europe over to England, because King James pushed through to get the 1611 out just in glory to his own name. And really we ought to look at the 1634 edition, which had all the manuscripts. So, you know, when people do that, they kind of intimidate you. So I decided to go look up the 1634 edition. Kind of interesting. It reads us too. I looked up the versions. You know, versions mean Greek translated in another language, like Latin and Syriac and Armenian and Coptic and all that stuff. I decided to look up the versions, and I found out they all read us. Well, this is getting more interesting. As a matter of fact, in verse 10, where most of you who have New American Standard, New International, or footnotes on your King James, it says it should read them. In verse 10, the word them in the third person plural, they shall reign, are all what we call variant readings, even in the manuscript evidence. It means there's a lot of variation as to whether it's them or not. You say, I don't really care about this. Well, you better start caring. By the way, it would be possible to read us in verse 9, since only one manuscript ever changed it, and you could read them in verse 10 as an editorial comment of the redeemed ones in verse 9 and still have the same argument. Did everybody follow that? I didn't think so. Here's the point. In verse 9, it's very clear that only one Greek manuscript contains anything but us. Well, let's suppose for a moment, even though there are variant readings that have they and them and they shall reign, let's suppose that that's correct. Then verse 10 is simply an editorial comment on the us of verse 9. The problem here would still exist. If you say in verse 9, thou art worthy because you have redeemed us to God, then the 24 elders are singing a song about themselves that they in fact are redeemed. Angels cannot be redeemed. They are not angels. They have to be people who are redeemed. Is everybody listening? I believe Revelation 1 really settles it. Go back to Revelation 1. Verse 4 says, John to the 7 churches. Verse 5, from Jesus Christ, in the middle of the verse, unto him that loved. Well, isn't that interesting? He didn't say unto him that loved them and washed them from their sins in his own blood. He didn't say he made them kings and priests unto God. And this is a direct quotation also in chapter 5, that he's made us kings and priests. No, the us belongs, and Revelation 1, 4-6 settles it, because there's no variation on that text whatsoever. You see, friends, what this means is the 24 elders in heaven, a completed body of people in heaven, are literally redeemed believers. The church of Jesus Christ is in heaven all during the tribulation. It is not on earth.